So that
Yesterday was like, what, 60 something?
They don't do a Super Bowl a week.
No. So we're Super Bowl's lagging. I gotta catch up. We're here to answer all your hot and burning questions about all things 034 Motorsport live, in person. Feel free to put your questions into the browser text field of your choice, whatever you're watching this on. By the way, I'm Javad Shadzi, and this is Nate Stewart. Please ask us any question about pretty much anything you want. We usually get questions about 034 Motorsport products, services, history, philosophy, also automotive questions. If you have questions about when something will be done or ready, or update questions, we may not answer it. We will probably deprioritize it for other questions that are more substantive that we can respond to. We're really not engaging much in trolling. So if you're being passive aggressive or trolling, we'll probably just delete your comments and block you. So please interact with us constructively, and we'll interact with you as well.
Not to say we don't answer hard questions or, own up to anything that you might be asking, but
hard questions is not trolling. Or
no. If it's a meaningless, one-sided dialogue, monologue, engage in that.
That's right. But yeah, ask the hardest hitting question you'd like. We typically always answer them. All right, someone's says B9 question here. I had a code pop up a few days ago. P24D8 evap pressure sensor switch B high circuit detected. Is this the G950 part?
I would have to dig specifically on that one, but high circuit is usually either. I'd say the most often thing I see is it's unplugged or there's some harness damage. I don't know that I've seen that many actual valves that have electrically failed internally. So I would take a peek first at the wiring, the connector, make sure everything's in good shape there.
Yeah. Someone said the 2025, the year you guys released some competition crushing products. How was Chili Fest? Well, Winterfest was great. It was on Saturday. I did, with some help, cook 25 gallons of my pot roast chili. Also used so one of our customers, George, you know who you are, made me some smoked chipotle pepper, where he takes habanero peppers and smokes them all day until they're dried out, and then somehow he grinds them. I don't know how, but this shit is so fucking spicy.
Perfect.
It's like when you shake it, it's like pepper spray, And as I added it into the pot, I was just getting blasted, and marked it too with just habanero pepper spray vapors. But this was the first year where I used that, and I think people noticed in the extra spiciness and flavor. So that was cool. So I might have to get some more of that from you, George. But I think we fed over 300 people. It was a well-attended event. A lot of cars, a lot of great energy. It was just amazing walking around the parking lot and seeing, we get to see what we do here in this building. And we see a lot of shit on the internet, good and bad. But to walk around in person in real life and see our parts on hundreds and hundreds of cars, people coming up, giving great compliments, enthusiasm, positivity. It nurtures, all of our souls twice a year. It's really nice. So it was a very fun event. We had great weather. It was sunny. It didn't rain. 2 very detailed, thorough tours were given. What am I missing? Oh, we raffled off how many sets of wheels? 3 sets? 3 sets of ZTF Flowform wheels were raffled, along with a bunch of other stuff.
People chose wheels over tunes. They're fired up about wheels.
Yeah, that's not surprising. Yeah. I guess it depends which tune.
Yeah.
So anyways, it was great. Honestly, I would say if you're anywhere in the tri-state area, drive to the next events. I would, if it was me, I would fly across the country to be at this event. It's
We had a
great
couple
event.
of people that definitely
Yeah.
were like Midwest area.
I mean, I think a $500-600 round trip ticket, it's totally worth it. Just for the people, the energy, the food, everything. So, as far as us releasing competition crushing products this year, 2025 will not be the year. It's been every year since about 2003 that we've been doing that. So I'm sorry to burst your bubble on that part. We do release competition crushing products every year.
We strive to keep that.
That is a hallmark of 034 Motorsport, and 2025 will be no different, but it won't be the first year we've done it. And yes, look for lots of great new products. We've been releasing about 200 new products a year for the last 4 or 5 years, and we will continue the breakneck competition crushing product release schedule. Someone's asking about how was Winterfest? What was the most exciting thing that happened throughout the event? I didn't get to make it. Sorry you didn't get to make it. I don't know. What was the most exciting thing other than my chili?
It's going to be.
I think that was pretty freaking exciting.
Individually.
We did multiple dyno demonstrations with a V8 R8.
Yep. I know the tour engagement was huge. We do facility tours,
Huge.
And the first tour took forever because just questions and comments and feedback we were getting from those going through the tour. So,
yeah,
people were definitely getting into it.
I think the whole thing was exciting. Yeah, no, it was great. What's the setup on Sean Davis's S4? I saw that it has some cool upgrades. What's the build for it? Saw it had MPI new 1900.
Yep.
Actually, there was some really excitement related to the 1900 on Sean's car.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So that's we're using that car as the B8.5 development platform for the 1900 software, along with all of the other like MPI related and flex fuel related software. So the 8.4, which is what's on my black car, ECU CMOS 8.4, and then on the B8.5 they got the CMOS 8.5. So those have pretty different software architectures in there. So you've really got to make sure that all of your software changes and all of your calibration work and whatnot works across both of them. So we use both platforms when we're calibrating to make sure that all works as it should.
And we made sure to send Merc Racing 2 payments for the same supercharger.
Yep.
Every time we move it from one car to another, we have to send him another payment.
It's a transactional thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
really confusing.
It's working really well.
You know about this? No.
We're again just proceeding with development on that for the B8.5s. But as far as the build, it's a stock motor. It's a very good example of what's out there in the vast majority of cars. That's why we like using that setup. Nothing crazy with it. Stock motor with a Merc blower on it, and the necessary supporting mods.
Mm-hmm. The internet really liked the flexing.
Mm-hmm. That comes along. We've got a bunch of software updates coming. You can. It's some stuff like viewing your ethanol content on the dash, just to know where it's at really quickly. It's also available because we have full feedback with the MPI controller. All of that gets data logged as well if you're doing logs. So yeah, we've got it fully integrated and very intertwined in the stock ECU so that it fully knows what's going on.
I was wondering, how do I install FSM and LFB on my B8.5 S5?
So that's for sport mode and left foot braking. You flash them just like you do any other file. That's the FSM is generally for any vehicle that doesn't have the drive select. So if you do not have the drive select option, just hit us up. Just flash the FSM calibration, and you'll have sport mode on at all times if that's what you want. And then, if you don't see that file on your calibration listing, just email Tuning App. We can get it added for you.
Something to clarify that first question I got asked this
morning. You guys mentioned that almost every year you get new releases, but not this year with no new big releases this year. Is that for hardware only, or is that also Or what is he referring to?
No, we have.
You jokingly said we have nothing new and big this year because every year is new and big and groundbreaking. He missed part 2 of that joke.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I have not said that we are not releasing any new big releases this year. I said we do that every year. It's not just this year. We're going to start doing it. We do it every year. And there is lots of new hardware and software that will be released this year, just like we did last year, just like we did the year before, pretty much going back to 2003 when we started the company. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. If you're Steven Spielberg, you know, you don't start releasing new great movies this year. You know, you've been doing it for decades. You know, I don't know. Tom Brady's not going to start winning Super Bowls this year. He's been winning them for years. So when someone asks, "Hey, Javad, are you going to start doing cool things this year?" I'm like, "Motherfucker, I've been doing cool things since probably before you were born." So that was the answer for that question. We do cool shit, dude. 034 Motorsport equals fucking cool shit. The second we stop doing cool shit, I'm out. I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go fucking sell insurance because I don't want to sit around here bullshitting with boring, no new cool stuff. That's not my thing. My entire life is filled with cool, awesome stuff. Everything I do, including the chili, is amazing, awesome chili. And every year it's better than the last. So that's what I do. That's my thing. I'm sorry if that sounds conceited or cocky or delusional. I don't know. It's just, that's who I am. If you know me, you know I don't do anything halfway. And 2025 will be not any different than all the years before it. Get ready to see some cool, awesome stuff. Because the second we stop doing cool, awesome stuff, I'm off to the next cool, awesome thing. All right. Any updates on lowering springs for non-air suspension SQ5s? We are actually testing pre-production samples currently. We hope to release it soon, but if it's not perfect, we're not going to release it. Someone's asking about rest of world tunes. What I mean, how do you want?
In general, we have very good coverage. There's some select models where we, you know, it's maybe a different ECU variant or some other nuanced thing that we haven't fully fleshed out. So always email tuning at, and we can get you an exact, yes or no answer for you.
So this says S3.
Yeah. We do a lot of rest of world S3s as well. So yeah, without more specifics, we can't answer anything directly, but we'll always check for you if you just fire an email up to tuning at.
That's it. Hi, how can a downpipe help with my spool time? Well, a downpipe can definitely help with your spool time. Generally, reductions in exhaust restriction are going to help with spool time. And so let's bookend it like I often like to do. So a turbo spins because there's pressure in front of the turbine wheel and a pressure differential across the turbine wheel that allows pressure from in front of the turbine wheel to escape out and behind the turbine wheel. And so if you have 30 psi of pressure inside the exhaust manifold and zero pressure after, so in the downpipe you have 0 psi, then you're going to have 30 psi of exhaust pressure spinning that turbine wheel and going into the turbine housing, being compressed by the AR ratio, and then being sprayed like a nozzle at the turbine wheel under even higher pressure. Now let's go to the other end of the spectrum. If you have a steel plate that blocks your turbo outlet, you would have 30 psi enter your exhaust manifold, go through the turbine wheel, and that 30 psi would hit the steel plate behind the turbine wheel, and you'd have 30 psi on each side of the turbine wheel, which means the turbine wheel would not spin or move because it would just be locked in a static pressure environment, just like it does when it's sitting there on your desk and there's 14.5 psi of atmosphere on each side of the turbine wheel. It doesn't spin. So if you could somehow go up in a spaceship, and let's say you had 14.5 psi inside the spaceship, which is kind of what humans are used to, and you mounted the turbo in the side of the spaceship, and that 14.5 psi, 1 bar of atmosphere went out the turbine wheel, then it would spin. So if you can reduce the back pressure, so let's say a stock catalytic converter and exhaust system produces 5 psi of back pressure. And if you have 30 psi coming into the turbine wheel and 5 psi behind it, that means your pressure differential is now 25. So if you put a high flow downpipe, and let's say that reduces the back pressure by 2 psi, you now have a 27 psi differential. So the pressure differential is up, and the turbine wheel can spin proportionally to that pressure differential. How well your aftermarket downpipe or cat increases spool time is going to be up to the amount of back pressure it reduces. If it doesn't, in practice, reduce back pressure, then it's not going to help the spool time. All right.
So there's not a simple answer.
Well, that was a simple answer, and it's substantially more complicated.
Oh, actually, there's one that kind of ties in with that a little bit. Actually, that came in this one down here, number 17.
I have a B9 S5 stage 1 with a stock intercooler, which I want to upgrade, but heard because of the extra air volume, it feels laggier on daily drive or any input. Yeah, this is a different, slightly different scenario. Yes, a bigger intercooler will create more lag, because in order to pressurize the air going into your combustion chamber, the turbo has to pressurize all the air before the combustion chamber. So the air around the intake valve, the air in the runner of the intake manifold, the air in the plenum, the air going through the throttle body, the air going out of the throttle body, down the intercooler pipe, down to the intercooler. Inside the intercooler has to be pressurized, all the way back to the compressor wheel, inside the compressor housing, back to the compressor wheel. That whole system has to be pressurized. And so the turbo has to fill that entire volume of air. Now imagine you're blowing up 2 balloons. You can blow them both up to 10 psi in each balloon. But if you are blowing up the bigger balloon, it's going to take you more breaths of air and more time to fill that bigger balloon with the same amount of pressure. So that is a drawback or trade-off to a larger intercooler, is you're going to end up with a larger volume of air to fill and pressurize before that boost gets inside your combustion chamber. Just like any modification, there is a host of factors that have to be balanced to create an optimal outcome. And the amount of time it takes to fill the system is only one of those things. So the stock intercooler does something very well. It's small, and it can be filled with a volume of pressurized air as quickly as possible. The drawback is it doesn't have enough thermal capacity to deal with even the factory boost levels, much less tuned stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 power levels. So one of the trade-offs you make is you trade a slightly longer spool time, and it's probably going to be noticeable. You trade that for proper cooling and thermal efficiency and thermal capacity, so that your engine can actually produce its rated or optimal power, because the turbo isn't overheating the engine.
Yep.
So there's just one of many factors. But this is actually a good argument for not putting the world's largest possible intercooler in your car. The whole idea of bigger is better is not true, especially not in this case, not with an intercooler, because if you're producing about 700 horsepower, you want the biggest intercooler possible to produce about 700 horsepower, but you don't necessarily need an intercooler for 1,000 horsepower, because that extra size and volume will increase your lag. So in a race car that's making about 500 horsepower, you would size the intercooler appropriately to be as big as possible up to supporting that 500 horsepower, and not any bigger than that. That would be an optimal implementation. Because especially in a race car, you don't want to increase the lag or the response, decrease the responsiveness of the engine.
And there's always other trade-offs. And nothing's free, so that larger intercooler core is going to block, other cooling devices and whatnot as well. So
Yeah, I just mentioned two or three.
Yeah, there's tons of considerations with any modification.
There's probably 15 if you really think about it, or more. But whenever you hear this is something that I think is a universal concept that should be applied to any kind of engineering endeavor, is when you hear somebody focusing 100% on one particular factor, they're not going to create an optimal result because they're avoiding all the other factors at play. All right. Have you guys tested a fully built motor yet for the B9 S4? I'm looking at getting my built here soon. Any difference in going with your 10-to-1 versus 9.5-to-1? To be honest, we haven't run a built motor here at our facility yet. We did just finish the motor, and it's going to be going into one of our cars, at which point we will start developing.
Yeah, it'll be a more tailored tune for the built motor stuff. We do have, there's a number of built motor cars running around right now and performing as well.
We are interacting with a number of customers and doing logs.
We'll have some more specific calibration updates coming to those.
Yeah, it's honestly, I'm really excited for the market to accept the built motor option, embrace it. We are pushing the factory motor and pistons so far beyond what they were designed for. And there's a lot of, expectations that, stock pistons that fail at stock power level should somehow be good for, 800 horsepower. And the fact is, they do surprisingly well with that much power.
Vast majority.
Shockingly well. Yeah. But we're seeing approximately a 2% failure rate with factory pistons at the highest power levels. And that's not bad, but it's not great. If it happens, if you're one of the 2%, it sucks. So doing built motors will finally truly address this issue. It will give people solid, reliable power at that level and higher. And we will be fully supporting it all the way. Any plans on upgraded throttle body for the B9? That is something we're working on. Our whole super duper product line. We will post more information in the future. B8.5 Audi S4 passenger side mount broken from the block. I've looked on some forums and seen this is an uncommon issue, but still out there. Any words or recommendations on that?
Yeah, I've seen one or two instances of these, and
the bung,
the actual
fails?
Casting on the side of the block, and
with what? With stock mounts or like?
Yeah.
How?
I don't know if it's a hardware loosens and the mount is moving, and you lose basically with all that hardware tight. That acts much more as like one unit as it's bolted to the block. If you get any hardware loosening, you've now got basically a flexing action on those castings. Mm-hmm. And I my guess is that's probably what's contributing to it because it's super rare. And there's no real reason that should be happening. So,
if you have your hardware torqued properly and it's not loose, I just don't see how that could be a problem.
But yeah, no, we beat the crap out of those and have never had a block side failure. If that, again, I'm assuming it's a block side failure based on his description. It could just be the mount itself failed, but if it was a block side failure.
That sounds like the mount was broken from the block. So that's the bung, Yeah, that's surprising. Oh, more questions about O2 spacers. Every week, still a thing.
Yeah.
Okay, if you have any of our tunes that are stage 2, do not run O2 spacers.
If someone on any other tune is telling you to run an O2 spacer, go somewhere else. There's no reason for them.
Is turbo surge flutter a concern for the EA888 platform? I don't know what that means, concern, as far as like, is it something to be concerned about? If you're running our tuning, no, you do not need to be concerned about it, but
you can certainly push those turbos into a surge state. From the Mark 7 was kind of one of one of the first platforms were like, oh, you can actually surge an OEM turbo. Usually they're so small you can't even get them into a surge condition.
But we calibrate the tuning to avoid surge and that kind of stuff. So that's why you don't need to be concerned about it. But we're concerned about it, and we make sure that the boost control strategy takes that into account. But that would happen if you were pushing the turbo too hard too soon to produce boost faster or sooner than it would like, then that's when you get that kind of flutter. How do the burbles work in your tunes, and are they louder on E85 files compared to 93?
They work in that generally it's a on deceleration you're going to have a little you're going to have a reduced timing ignition angle, and then you're going to get some of that combustion event occurring late in the cycle, so you'll hear those pops from those combustion events in the exhaust. That's generally the quick and dirty of how most of the burble stuff works. As to the specifics, it's really going to depend on the exact vehicle or the engine and calibration that are in there. There's a myriad of different ways that can be turned on and set up. And in general, they're actually a little bit quieter on E85 than 93. It's just a little more fuel mass, slower burn, just different reactivity. And burbles do audibly change typically a little bit softer on E85.
Yeah. We got a lot of update questions. When it comes to that was not an update question. That one's back.
Yeah.
When it comes to lowering, what height do you recommend I should go? B9.5 SQ5.
That with air or
I think that's
I don't think it matters. I mean, in general, on an SQ5, I wouldn't want to lower it much more than 2 inches, just because you get into issues with the strut, potentially bottoming out. There's plenty of people driving around lower than that. But yeah. Well, yeah, but you can modify those. That's not stopping anything. Is the B9 a weak platform? The question is,
it's right there.
Is the B9 a weak platform regarding engine issues even on stock engines? Well, I think I just mostly addressed this question. No, it's not a weak engine. Stock, they produce 350-ish horsepower. On our stage 1 tuning, they're pushing 450.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was reading something else, but yeah, sure. That number sounds great.
And they're very reliable on stage 1 or stage 2.
Yep.
Our standard output, which is also very reliable, is pushing over 500 wheel. And our stage 3, which is really, at the kind of upper safe edge of what's possible, has a very low failure rate. But that's when you start to see the factory pistons cracking. And that's at about 800 horse, 750 plus horsepower level. So I wouldn't say this is a weak motor by any means. We have cars running 9s reliably on these blocks. Who was it just recently that just went and ran like 3 9s in a row? 3 9s. Or not 9 9s, like that. That's a solid, strong, reliable motor. But every motor has its limit. If you're talking about the Daza, which I think everyone thinks is a great, strong motor, people are building those. No one's running around 800 horsepower in stock block. I mean, if you are, good luck. Those don't seem to have the piston cracking issues like the B9 does. But even those,
those have the rod ejection issues.
Yeah, those depend on power level. Well, and they have the wrist pin issue where the piston fails and the wrist. The piston gets
the rod tweaks a little bit.
And then the rod bends from the side loading. But no, it's a great tough motor, and it's a great platform to tune. We have many thousands of customers running a host of our tuning products very reliably. So we actually have been working with a laboratory to analyze factory pistons, and we will be releasing a white paper soon about what we're finding about the factory piston failure issue. So stay tuned for that. I'm
Yeah,
sure
I mean,
we'll piss a lot of people off with
yeah,
that.
just look back though too on like the history of any VAG motor and like where was it ever possible to make this kind of power over stock?
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
With this kind of displacement, I mean, you can get big numbers on the the V8 stuff, but it's for a 3-liter 6-cylinder motor, it's a stout, well engineered piece.
Yeah, back in the 2.7T days, the B5 S4, once you got to like 500, you're building a motor, and that's like stage one. No, it's tough, strong, very efficient, wonderful, state-of-the-art motor, but it can't do everything. Had to drive in a very bad snowstorm a couple nights ago, and my 034 intake filter got covered in snow. Took it off and dried it out, and the intake tube seemed dry. Do you think the car will be okay?
You know what car this is, by chance? I'm just curious.
Yeah, that would be interesting if you can do this. I don't see why you would have any issue at this point. I think I would recommend getting our filter cleaning kit, and you could just give it a cleaning and reapply the very light oil.
I don't know the exact situation here, but if that filter got like clogged to the point with the amount of snow, that filter will collapse. So if the filter looks fine, you've probably got no issues at all.
Yeah, it must have really been snowing.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. Yeah, you could stick a filter sock on it if you're worried. I don't know.
Yep.
And that would help with the snow actually sticking to the filter.
Yeah,
but
no.
That's the first time I've heard of that.
If you hit a huge degradation in flow, you'll see some signs on the filter. Would be my guess.
Someone's asking what we drink out of these cups. I drink straight crack cocaine. How about you?
Mine's a little softer. I just got the
water.
He's got.
What is it?
No, I have a coffee with oat milk.
What do they call it? Dihydrate monoxide or something? Yeah, it's water.
Monosodium dioxide. What is it? Now you got me.
I was just like, there's a silly name.
Hydro.
Okay.
Hydro. Hydro dioxide.
Well, it's H2, so it's dihydrated.
Yeah, dihydro
monoxide. Is what I was thinking.
Yeah, dihydro monoxide.
Dihydrogen monoxide.
Dihydrogen monoxide.
My mom stole the 034 coffee cup. Yeah, that'll happen.
Oh, she did?
Stole?
Yes. Someone else says looks like an oat milk kind of guy. Oat milk has its places, but no, it's water.
You look like the oat milk guy?
I don't know who does.
Well, I actually have oat milk.
There you go.
The reason I have oat milk is because I have like 3 coffees a day, and if I had milk with each one, it's just a lot of cholesterol that I don't need. So anyways, I like the oat milk, and it also lasts forever. I have a fridge in my office, and a little box lasts like 2 months.
The follow-up on that, be definitely extreme circumstances, but seems like the filter did its job for sure. Dried it out, and we'll look into a cover for future if it happens again. Yeah, if you're in a super snowy climate or a really cold area where you're getting that real light, fluffy stuff that can get in there, because it's got to come. I mean,
it breaks the grill, then just
the inlet path too. Because there's also if he's got the full setup, there's also a snow screen on the front for the scoop. So if that's been removed, then I guess there's potential for getting snow in there. Or if your fender liner is left the chat, that can certainly be a snow flinging issue. So.
Yep.
How do you know if launch control is active? What's different over stock brake boosting for a B9 S4?
This is B9 S4. Well, I mean, it's all. I mean, you know if launch control is active. The ECU knows. So I mean, there's parameters and conditions that'll get you into a launch control mode. The B9, depending on the year, the later ones will tell you if your launch control is active. The early B9s, I don't have an indication on the dash that it's active, but lots of brake pressure, lots of gas pressure as well, and you'll be in launch control. I mean, with traction control off and all the normal pre-setup for any of the launch control. What's different over stock? It's mostly going to be the parameters that we specify around it. So how much load are we allowing on the engine? How much axle torque are we permitting? And there's the rate of accel stuff off the line. So all that gets set up specifically.
Substantially faster than just brake boosting.
Yeah, from a stock like non-launch control side.
Right.
Yep.
It also won't snap an axle like brake boosting can.
So there are axle limits and all that in there.
If you're not in AMAX mode, it won't, or if you're not in launch control, it won't AMAX shift.
So that's a good point. Yeah, your shift after launch will be different. So you'll get either an AMAX. You'll know if you get an AMAX shift. It's going to be a very sharp, abrupt shift versus the normal torque cut. Change into the next gear.
Is there a difference in horsepower between a catted sport cat versus a completely catless for B9 3.0 T?
That's really going to depend on your power level.
Yeah, I don't have the data on that. I could speak in general terms. But the problem with a gutted cat is that since it's just this big chamber, it can create a disruption in flow compared to a properly designed high flow cat or a catless downpipe, which has a flow path without the big open chamber. So once you remove the matrix from the stock cat, you're left with this big open chamber. And so that can the turbo can go from this fluctuating high and low pressure situation, and also a lot of turbulence can be created by flowing through that. So if you took a straight 3-inch pipe and you flowed it, then you stuck a big chamber in the middle of it and flowed it again, it would probably flow less because of the flow disruption. So so I don't recommend doing that. If you really want to get rid of the cat, I would look for a properly engineered test pipe type thing.
That's what he's talking about. Completely catless.
Okay. Well, he said gutted cat.
No, it's just completely catless.
It doesn't say gutted.
I thought it said gutted. Okay. All right. Anything else we should jump on?
I mean, this one's pretty funny.
Interesting.
Just got a ECU Stage 1 with you guys on my S3 8V, but I'm hearing a loud beep sound under hard acceleration coming from the ECU area. I didn't know the ECU beeped.
I didn't either. No, the ECU does not have a buzzer or beeper in it, so I'm unsure what you've got under the dash there that's chirping at you.
That reminds me of like the older Audis with a certain steering wheel that's really flexy, and under really hard acceleration, you grab and pull the steering wheel too hard, it twists and the horn would go off.
Mm-hmm.
And so you'd see people like going at the track, like honking as they go down the front straight if they had like a modded car.
Yeah, they had really sketchy like pads on the outside of the horn pad pre-airbag days.
And then I remember way back when in the late 90s, Dahlbach, he wired up a boost switch that would turn on his headlights when it was under boost, which was pretty fucking cool at the time. And so he'd launch, and then the car would, go, and then the headlights would turn on, then he'd shift, the headlights would turn off, then he'd get back on the throttle, headlights would come back on. It was pretty badass for that day and age. That was some pretty trick stuff.
Little hop switch on there.
Mm-hmm. Now we have pops and bangs, criticals, and things like that.
Next time I do a quarter mile fast at the drag strip,
Just grab a fistful of high beam.
Well, then people started doing that, just like trying to like emulate it. It's like the whole pops and bangs.
Yeah.
We lost the light here.
How do we look? Still looks okay.
Little jiggle jangle.
How would I tackle oil consumption issue on supercharged 3-liter Q7 piston rings, PCV, engine flush?
PCV and piston rings are pretty common on those. Lots of guys I know are going down the B12 path for it's like a solvent on the rings, kind of breaks up the oil ring a bit.
So you spray it into the combustion chamber.
It's a soak. You fill it, you let it sit overnight, and you do an oil change after. It's a whole process.
We used to do stuff like that in the i5 days with like WD-40 and stuff like that.
Yeah, B12's been pretty successful in some cases. If it is like a gunked up oil control ring.
I did that once with an Audi 210 valve block that I got for free. Well, I think I got it for like $300, which at that time was like free.
Yep.
And it was all rusty. It had been sitting out in the rain, and it like wouldn't even turn over. And I soaked it in WD-40 and got the rings unstuck. The cylinder walls still looked good, but it went from having like no compression to like
The rings actually loosened up.
yeah.
Yeah. So no, there's been some pretty decent reports on
Well, that's
12
definitely worth a shot. Do you have to
Yeah.
take the
It's-
intake manifold off to do that, or
You don't, but you have to. I would invest in a scope, so that you actually see inside the plugs.
So you
make
put
sure
it
that
in through
it's-
the spark plug?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and then you just go
It's-
top dead center. You just,
Ideally, you want to get all your pistons as low
Okay,
as you
yeah.
can, so you get as much in there. It's a thing.
and then you got to do an oil change.
And then you got to because you're gonna get a lot of leakage down past. It's gonna be in your oil, and you drop get rid of the oil.
And that would only help if it was a piston ring issue,
if it's a piston ring issue,
which it very likely is.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
you just
not super uncommon on those, but also PCV issues are also a thing. So it's very much an easier maintenance item to tackle if you don't know the history on yours.
I have a Q7 with very good oil
Yeah,
consumption.
yours has been really pretty clean
But I think driving the shit out of it probably helps too. So
for the rings for sure.
For a CREC engine, can we get any cleaning benefit from occasionally running E85? Anything else we should consider when the ultimate goal is reliability of engine?
I feel like we got this question last week.
Yeah,
there's going to be something go around that people think
I don't-
E85 is better.
I don't think E85 is necessarily better for cleaning your engine.
No, detergent-wise, gasoline
Yeah.
is still going to be a more of a cleaning solvent
From-
than
yeah.
E85.
But gasoline is a much better solvent than E85. So I would stick with the gasoline. I know.
If that's what your concern is, yeah. I mean, there's people that do the opposite of what you're suggesting, where they run a tank or two of gas,
Yeah.
every month or so.
I have a C7.5 CREC with 0 through 4 stage 2. I'm running a 187 millimeter crank pulley. I have an intake, heat exchanger, and CWA 100. Without running a higher octane, what is the best path forward for additional horsepower?
He doesn't say what fuel he's running.
Without running.
It
Well,
sounds like he's on whatever he's on.
Yeah, I mean, if you have access to E85, that's strong.
Well, that would be higher.
Yeah.
I don't think I think he wants to keep running whatever fuel he's running now.
But yeah, we'll have a stage 2+ file coming soon for you.
Yeah, hang tight for the 2+.
You can bump up the pulley ratio.
That'll turn up the boost, more power.
Yep.
More eyeballs sinking into your head. Would you consider getting the lowering springs instead of coilovers for the 2019 Audi S5 in terms of performance? We talk about this regularly. Our springs are very optimized right out of the box. We test them for great ride, for optimized height, and for handling performance. If you put coilovers on and they're adjustable, then you're entering this whole new world of the wide range of possibilities for compression and rebound dampening, and possibly even more. So if you want to just install something that's 95% as good as you could ever possibly want or need, even on track, our springs are a great option. For less than $400, you're going to get a very optimized spring. Now you can spend $1,000, $2,000 on some coilovers, and aside from the height, adjusting the damping or rebound is
if they're adjustable.
If they're adjustable, which a lot of them are. Especially the more you spend, the more expensive they are. But yes, it's an 820. If you buy a coilover that's not adjustable, hopefully whoever built it and designed it did a good job optimizing it. But you don't always know, because sometimes they're just kind of throwing parts together. Like this shock and that spring, they make the housing fit, but it's not necessarily tested or driven to the extent that we would here, where we're a smaller company that curates, from an engineering standpoint, things to a very fine degree. Does the MR1900 require long tube headers? Does the TVS 1320 have proven gains left on the table with long tube headers considering the scavenging effect?
It's a couple of things here. I would say the 1900 stuff, if you want to get the most out of it, you are going to want to do some sort of upgrade. I don't think it needs to be long tube headers. I don't think any of those on the market are necessarily going to be a huge power adder. As far as scavenging effect, I don't think I've ever seen a header on the market that actually is engineered for that.
Well, I think some of them.
They may claim, but I don't think that I've seen any properly engineered header that isn't just a header versus being actually like, you know, volume matched per cylinder and having the correct firing order in the collectors and doing all of that work to get an actual any sort of reasonable scavenging effect. So I don't know. I wouldn't worry about that aspect of it too much.
Yeah, I think the scavenging effect is up in the air. There's going to be people that make claims because there are a handful of headers out there that do scavenge in that way, which means they're tuned. So when exhaust comes out of an exhaust port, it creates a high pressure wave. And the idea is that as the high pressure wave moves in and out of the collector, it creates a vacuum for the next high pressure pulse that goes through. And this would only happen at one part of the RPM band. You cannot create a scavenging effect, you know, from 1,000 RPM to 7,000 RPM. So there's going to be a resonance. So it could be across 1,000 RPM where it starts and ends. And there's going to be a ramp up or slope up of scavenging and then back down after that RPM, but it'll be centered on one RPM point. So if you really want your car to accelerate hard at 5,000 RPM, let's say you have a Chevy 350, and you got a cam and everything's, you know, let's say the cam comes on at 4, and then the Chevy 350, you know, headers kick in at 5, and so you can kind of create this like 3,500 to 6,000 RPM power band. That's you know, the whole strategy there. You know, and that used to happen with a lot of testing and math. Yeah. I mean, it's the type of acoustics that you can model mathematically. Nowadays, there's actually computer programs that do this quite well. Computer modeling programs where you put in the lengths of the tubes and the size of the tubes and the size of the collector, and then, you know, once you can model something that performs, then there's the challenge of actually building it.
And if your model is correct, it's a lot that goes into getting a correct model, especially then you've got a blower to add in, and you've got forced induction on the other end of it.
It gets a lot more complicated.
It gets complicated quickly.
Yeah,
and then assuring your exhaust itself is going to allow that header to work properly in the mode.
Yeah, and it's clear. I think the model's correct. It's just, are you taking into account all the variables in the model?
Yes.
If the model doesn't have all the inputs, the output's going to be complicated.
Garbage in, garbage out.
But the math in the model is relatively solid and reliable if it can take advantage of that. It's the same thing in the speaker world of you design a speaker box and you're trying to determine the port length. If you don't put in boundary effects and end corrections correctly and, you know, all these other variables, then you're going to get something different at practice. But like Nate said, we did do a header on the 1900 though, right?
Currently there is one
and
on mine.
Benefited from
over the stock manifold. Yeah.
Over the stock. And it's just, that's just more down to higher flowing tubing versus the stock manifold, which is, I wouldn't say restrictive, but slightly more restrictive
at that power level. And we did sensor it up. We did back pressure measurements on those components and whatnot as well to validate that change made a measurable difference. Man, you got shredded.
Jeez.
In a dogfight?
Mm-hmm. Chilly. What's your favorite aspect of hosting Summer and Winterfest? For me, I already talked about it in the beginning of just the positive feedback, seeing the community come together, seeing what we do in the real world on people's cars, hearing from people the impact of our products, the fun and we're not saving lives here, but the fun, the enjoyment, the enthusiasm that what we do here in this building, to see it in people's lives, on their faces, in their cars. It just like keeps me going every
Yeah,
6 months.
Same. It's all about the interaction with you guys.
Yeah. Also, if any hot babes are there, it never hurts either.
Like,
True.
We could use a lot more hot babes at these events. Yeah. Have you guys thought about adding online editing of gauges on the SPI app? It would be so nice to be able to change things around when I'm not in the car connected.
there's more and more stuff we are working on. I don't know if we've got offline editing ability right now in
That would be cool.
in a very high queue, but it's something we can look at.
Do you think heat shielded downpipes are necessary or strongly recommended for a B9 S5? It definitely doesn't hurt. Heat shielding protects your car and the rest of the stuff around it. I don't think it's
I
necessary.
don't know with the hot V on those. I think I would lean on some shielding.
I mean, on the factory downpipes, this is coming out of the
Well, I guess what we're talking. Ooh, that's a good point. Are we talking the catalyst or the downpipe?
He's saying downpipe.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Sorry, I was just defaulting to.
But I mean, the cat is part of the downpipe.
He's referring to cat.
Oh, okay.
On this market, downpipe is the cat.
Okay.
Yes, ours is heat shielded, and because not only is the cat hot, it's extra hot because it's designed to heat up and get so hot that it catalyzes any unburnt fuel flowing through it. So I would definitely have a heat shielding on the high flow cat. On the pipes coming out of the cat, I don't think it's necessary or as important, but it couldn't hurt. Like I said, a little bit heat shielding. I'd be careful with the fiberglass wrap. I'm not crazy about that stuff. It used to be all that was available, and it doesn't last very long, and it can be very corrosive. I'd like to understand the chemistry behind that, but I've seen metal just fall apart after being wrapped with fiberglass wrap. So could be good for like short-term use, but nowadays this really nice embossed stainless steel thin, like what our high flow cat is encased in, you can buy that in sheets and you can wrap it around things, and you can even weld it.
Yeah, there's a lot of services too. You can send them components and then they'll make you
or you can use like safety wire to wire it in place. So yeah, it's
Nick brought up a good point too. Turbo blankets are a thing in some of these markets. B9 in particular, a lot of people are putting turbo blankets on.
This company's really pushing.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, the blanket in theory is good. A lot of the implementations out there can severely impact the wastegate actuator, though. So you really got to be careful on that on the install, and that the blanket isn't. It should never touch the actuator. That there's no reason it should be in contact with the actuator. Anytime it's in contact, you are impeding that actuator's ability to move accurately. And I think everything on the market is literally smashed under that actuator because it's just a off-the-shelf blanket.
Talk about solving one problem that's really not a big problem and creating a massive actual problem.
Yeah, because those are already heat shielded around the stock charger, the stock housing. So you're just creating new issues.
Thinking about going custom tune. I have a TTE 710 S4 B9. I'm on IE right now. Do you think you're off the shelf?
I think it's just in general. Do y'all think OTS or custom?
Oh, okay. We talk about this often, that no custom tune is going to have the level of developments, engineering, refinements, power performance that our off-the-shelf tune has. A custom tune just isn't going to have that level of engineering. I would say, that we're a very reputable tuning company, and if there's any other reputable tuning companies in the industry, their off-the-shelf tunes would have the similar benefit of having years of development, refinements, and engineering put into them. When you go get a custom tune, it's probably going to have a fraction of the level of engineering development or effort put into it. So there's kind of this misnomer in the market that a custom tune is better than off-the-shelf tune, and that's simply almost never the case. Now, if we did custom tunes, and you brought your car to us and we quote unquote custom tuned your car, it would be a very good custom tune because it would have the benefit of our off the shelf development and engineering with the added benefit of additional refinements for your car. But we don't find that these cars need additional refinements or changes or tweaks or tuning. The factory ECU is very powerful at adapting, adjusting to small differences between one engine and turbo to the next. So I'm confident that if you were on our off-the-shelf tune, you would have optimal performance, power, safety, drivability over anything that's custom. In fact, more and more we're seeing people who have left off-the-shelf tuning from another tuner, gone and got a custom tune, been unhappy, repeatedly been let down by a custom tuner, come to us and finally say, this is what I've been looking for all along. I can't speak to one of our competitors' tune. I can only speak to ours.
Yeah.
And I know you would be very happy with our tuning.
Yeah, and it comes back to, I think, a conversation we had at the very beginning of this is if a tune is hyper focused on one thing, which is, in the custom tuning world, it's usually that dyno chart, then you often sacrifice a lot of, the time hasn't been put into the rest of it, the startup, the altitude compensations, the temperature stuff, all of the other, rounding out of the calibration that makes it work reliably day in, day out.
I'm not sure I want to answer a question by someone named 69 MaxiPad 69.
But that's why it was.
The
question is answered with the
right.
All right, we just got a few minutes. I saw Sean's S4 got built now with upgraded blower and fueling, but is it worth going MPI plus 1900 on 3.0 T? I saw a competitor tuner on their SQ5 only making 560 wheel. 104 E40 plus water math gets nearly 520. Pretty big investment to do for only 40-ish wheel horsepower versus the price of how much everything is. Yeah, we've talked about this. The 1900 Merc Racing kit is a really nice engineered kit. We've had great results from it. It's not the huge 100 plus horsepower bump that people are looking for, but 40 wheel is something, and it's not just one part of the power band, it's across the whole curve. So keep in mind that as you put your foot down and accelerate, say from around 3,000 to 7,500 RPM, you're going to have another 30 to 50 wheel the entire time you're accelerating. So that every moment of acceleration is going to benefit from that additional power versus if there was just a bump, say at 5,000 RPM, you would have the same acceleration, more acceleration, same acceleration, so this is going to be that added 40 wheel across the, virtually the whole power band, thanks to the nature of how supercharging works. There's also another thing coming into play is diminishing returns. We're at a point where the first 100 horsepower are the easiest, and then the next 100 horsepower are 3 or 4 times harder. And as you go up, it just gets harder and harder to make more power. This is how everything is. The law of physics is that to get more out of it and more units out of a unchanging base structure just requires more and more energy to do it. So it's up to you if it's worth it. That's a personal choice, but there do appear to be a number of people who would like to take on that extra power, especially you add our cams in the mix. It helps too. That's another 30 horsepower unit. So anyways, something to consider, but I can't tell you whether it's worth it or not. But it's definitely not nothing.
No.
Yeah. And in our experience, the car is much faster. We need to validate that with actual acceleration times.
Capture for that.
Quick reminder, our Winterfest sale is ongoing. It ends Thursday. So grab some parts now.
Dude.
Yeah, sorry, I had to go full AP over there. Grab some today. That's very exciting. If you tell someone to grab some parts today, they're going to fucking grab it. I mean, how can you say no? It's intoxicating
Grab
to
it by the
grab a
legs.
part on today, not tomorrow. Don't wait a week. Just grab it right now on our website. It's in there. I could see why it works so well because I want to grab it right now.
See, there's no need for me anymore.
No.
Yeah. Now that we've got the grab it marketing strategy, Nick, I think you've been made obsolete.
So yeah,
It was nice knowing you, buddy. All right, grab those parts, guys. On that bombshell, we'll let you guys go. We'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us again.